Goes back, Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Norcross.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank the witnesses for coming here today. And as you can see how excited we are about the defense acquisition reform. And the folks that you're seeing here are the ones particularly on the hardware committee on what we're dealing with day in and day out. So we talk about building capacity, and we've seen across our industrial base, not just for defense, but our country, outsource so much of what we used to do. And how do we bring that back? A couple of years ago, we passed the Mines Act, which talks about domestic content. And the idea of buying American is a great concept, but there are details. Not just to buy a reason, it's to build that capacity so when we need to use it, it's going to be there. And one of the most difficult things in building that capacity is building the workforce, the skilled workforce. You don't order that and get it in 2 weeks. That takes a generation. So the idea of domestic content, incredibly important. So when we talk about the awareness the department has of in major acquisition programs, was 55%. And there's all kinds of Swiss cheese how they can get around that. And what the Mines Act did over 7 years was to increase it to 75%. Not just for the sake of buying American, which is a great concept, but to build our capacity. Not just to say for a year, but over the years. Part of that in the 24 NDAA was that we were to get a report due in December 24. That has passed. We have not received that. So, Mr. Duffy, first and foremost, will you make sure that we get that report in a timely fashion? Because the idea of not knowing what contains our domestic content is a real issue that we've been dealing with.
Yes, sir. I will. We'll get that to you.
And that goes on year to year, so we can understand what is coming down. Because coming through the pandemic, we learned the hard way, and certainly much of what we're doing here today focuses directly on building our capacity. I just want to shift a little bit. It was mentioned the right to repair, the intellectual property of a company. So we want more off the shelf. Great concept. But then we immediately get into something that was developed by a corporation for a profit motive, and yet you want to have those intellectual rights to repair it. This is an extremely difficult issue to talk about, particularly when we're building, let's say, for a vehicle that's built on a commercially available. The idea of just turning it over is something that is going to be a problem. The F-35 is the old way. We unfortunately don't own that, and we are paying for it as we go down the road. But how do you balance the right to repair, what we need in the field at the appropriate time, versus a company's intellectual property? It can't be all cases all the way. We took a stab at this in the NDAA, but this is going to be an ongoing issue, particularly when you're asking off the shelf. How are you going to deal with that?
I think it's a very important and excellent question, and I think we have to be creative about how do we, is there a surgical way to get access to the data that we need in order to enable us to repair and sustain the systems without violating the intellectual property protections that are the profit motive for corporations and are really the enabler of our industrial capability. And so I don't, sitting before you, have the answer today, but I assure you I understand the complexity of the issue, and it's one that we have some of our best folks. Sustainment is an ongoing challenge, and just thinking through how do we, when you're competing for resources, how do we ensure that we have that adequately addressed so that we have operational readiness is a high priority of mine, and this is an important element of that. So I assure you we are getting after this problem and trying to figure this out.
So each one of the hardware committees is very much focused on that to make it work for both sides, because that innovation is the very issue that we want to capture and move on. With that, I yield back.